Welcome to Sacred Circle, and this is our first gathering, so I will just spend a moment and introduce myself a bit and share some of my background. And then the teaching topic that I'd like to present tonight is what it might look like to fully own our sensitivity and our gifts. And there are so many challenges with being a sensitive soul in the world today, but also it is a beautiful and much needed gift. So with all things, it also comes with a shadow side as well, and we'll get into all of that in a moment. So by way of brief introduction for me, again, my name is Erin. I'm an energy healer, and I specialize in working with the subconscious mind. I have a practice called Water's Edge, and I started that practice in 2019. Since then, I've worked with hundreds of clients on all things, all levels, from physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And in the past year, I have begun to focus my work on healing with other folks who are deep feelers and sensitive souls, such as yourselves. Some of the certifications and studies I've completed, I'll just talk about briefly. I started in the Emotion Code and Body Code, which are two techniques developed by Dr. Bradley Nelson, who was a now retired, but was a holistic chiropractor, and he developed these softwares that allow us to muscle test and communicate with people's subconscious that way. Inside of those programs is everything in the human body, everything physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And so it's like a mind map that we use for muscle testing, and that's what I use to dialogue with my client's subconscious. I also use shamanic journey as another way to access the subconscious mind. I did a course with Sandra Ingerman. If anyone is familiar with her, she is the queen of shamanic journey. And I also completed a 2-year ministerial training program to become an ordained non-denominational reverend, which was held by the Center for Sacred Studies in California. And through that work, that is the space through which I was given a lot of the ways that I work, a lot of the ritual teachings, and really affected who I am as a healer and truly as a person in the way that I walk around in the world. So some of the work that I do or services that I offer, we can talk more about that in detail later as well, but I do work with people one-on-one through energy healing sessions or deeper containers, such as mentorship. I work a lot with people who are already healers or holistic workers and are looking to deepen into their gifts. I work with people through small group courses as well as self-study courses. So there's a lot of ways and offerings there. And again, as I mentioned, my focus lately has been to help deep feelers and sensitive souls, such as yourselves, learn to honor their gifts and to heal the, what I like to call, hurts, habits, and hangups that come with being a deep feeler and a sensitive soul, what often feels like something that is overwhelming, and to help it feel more sustainable instead. So tonight, indeed, let's talk about how do we learn to own our sensitivity, and how do we learn to honor our gifts when they feel totally overwhelming and or other people don't seem to understand us or relate to us, and the world doesn't seem to honor our sensitivity either. And so the first thing is that I developed a quiz to help us do this, and I know there are so many online as well, but the first step is to identify what kind of deep feeler or sensitive soul you are. So you could be an empath, you could be clairsentient, you could be energy sensitive, you could be a highly sensitive person or an HSP. And you could also have multiple of these gifts or attributes. I know I carry all 4 of them. So when I say I feel you, I feel you. And so why is this so important? For one, it impacts the way that we take care of ourselves. And again, I created a quiz that it's very unlike all of the other internet quizzes. So don't be alarmed there, but perhaps if you found yourself on the internet searching like, am I an empath? This might be for you. And what the quiz does is help you identify your primary feeling gift, because again, oftentimes we have multiple, and we can also have all of these other gifts as well, like clairvoyance. We could be seeing things, clairaudience, we could be hearing things, we could be a channel, right? There's so many beautiful bouquets of energetic gifts, and all of us have a unique combination of them. So at the end of today, I will send that link out to you if you're interested, along with a bunch of other goodies. And next month's meeting, the first Sunday of March, we're actually going to get into that a bit deeper. The topic will be on each of the feeling gifts. So if you are curious to learn more, definitely tap in next month. So once we know what our gifts are, we can learn how they are affecting us. And what I always want people to know about your gift is that you were born this way. So many of my clients come to me with the understanding that their hypersensitivity is because of trauma. And this isn't really a black or white, chicken or the egg issue, because our energy affects our experiences, and our experiences affect our energy. But everything that I know about our souls and how we land in a human body and how we choose this life is that we are absolutely born with our gifts. And this is really important. And so if we landed in our human body this way with these gifts, then we can start to see how they are impacting our lives. Many of us weren't raised in homes where our families were aware of our sensitivities. They likely weren't honored. They likely weren't even spoken about. They likely weren't even aware that we could be an empath, right? And so how that feels to the spirit, being unseen and being overly sensitive, right? We tend to shut down. We fear our gifts, we resent our gifts, we think something is wrong with us, because the way that we perceive is ourselves and our experience of the world feels so different than the way it looks like other people are perceiving and experiencing the world. And now later in life, for many of us, we have a mystical or a spiritual experience that causes us to awaken to our reality. We realize that there is more to the world than the 3D reality we've been given. We have these experiences where we start to understand that there is a world outside of our 5 senses, and we start to become aware of our gifts. So step number 1 is to identify what exactly the gifts that you have are. And again, we'll talk about that more in March. So step 2 is to learn to honor our sensitivities. And through honoring, I mean both to change our patterns of behavior, all of the unhealthy ways that we've been coping, and also to learn how to become our own best healer, and to begin to give that validation that we were so lacking in our early years to ourselves. And so a little story about when I woke up to the reality that I am an empath. I learned that really in a quite casual way of a friend sort of mentioning it. And I was that person who had been Googling, like, am I an empath? What is wrong with me? And she said the word, and I just had this lightning bolt moment. And that awareness shifted so much for me. And what it gifted me primarily was this awareness that not everyone experiences the world the way that I do, right? And not just on like all humans are unique butterflies level, but on a like my energy, I'm literally picking up different things than other people. I am experiencing the world in a completely different way. And that was my number one question as a young person. If everyone experienced the world the way that I do, why is it so hard to be in the world? Why is it so painful? And why do all of these terrible things keep happening, right? And so when I woke up to this reality, so many things shifted for me. My job, my relationships. I started questioning sort of all of the choices that I had been making, and were those from a place of integrity and authenticity, or was I sort of going along with the flow, outsourcing, looking around what other people were doing? And this brings me to step number 3, which is starting to heal some of those hurts, habits, and hangups that so many of us have been carrying around. And this is what doing the work really looks like. And so what I'm talking about there is really taking ownership over some of the unhealthy coping mechanisms we've developed as a result of being a deep feeler or a sensitive soul in the world. So this could be people pleasing, it could be codependent relationships, it could be a sort of constant need for validation from other people. It could even be sort of forcing our awakened or enlightened selves on other people. So as an example, one of the most problematic things about the internet quizzes are typically that, I hear, oh, I just found out that I'm an empath. Did you know everyone is an empath? And I'm like, no, that's not, we're not everyone's an empath. So there's this like sort of automatic step to projection, where once we figured out something about ourselves, it can be really tempting to try to force that on other people. And if you've ever tried to help enlighten someone in your life, I'm sure you know this and can relate that it doesn't work that way. So in this process, we need to learn to let go of other people's expectations of us. We need to let go of our need for validation from other people and begin to start doing these things for ourselves. And so one of the most common hurts, habits, and hangups I see from deep feelers and sensitive souls is that by default, our brains and nervous systems are wired to be more externally focused than internally driven. So this is really huge for us to understand about ourselves. And why is this? Again, if we think about our early childhood development, so before 10 years old, when we are learning about the way the world works from our families of origin, we are developing all of these belief systems and understandings of the world, and they become incredibly rigid. Even those things that we are not consciously taking in are taken in by our subconscious, which is where my work comes in. Because the truth of the matter is, our brains and our conscious lives, it's like an iceberg. The majority of us is actually under the water, is actually going into our subconscious mind. And those subconscious learnings and beliefs start to guide and dictate our behavior. So they become limiting beliefs about ourselves and the world. And this is also where we start trapping Dr. Nelson talks about this in the emotion code, and this was the foundation of my work. We start trapping unprocessed either emotional energy or just generally like all of the energy in our lives that we're not dealing with because we are inundated as deep feelers and sensitive souls. So we can't possibly be present for all of it. Inherently, the nature of feeling gifts means that we are catching both other people's energy, emotional energy, primarily, as well as our own. And so that is incredibly confusing for deep feelers and sensitive souls. And this is one of the reasons that we also tend to develop incredibly poor boundaries, because it feels like there's no separation between our emotional and energetic world and someone else's. And so there are a lot of tools that I teach to start creating that energetic separation and to start to create clear energetic boundaries between ourselves and others so we can more clearly tune into what is true for us versus what is other people's. And when we can energetically detach from other people's experience, we can emotionally and mentally and spiritually, when we energetically detach, we can more emotionally, mentally, spiritually detach.